Okay, guys, so last class we started talking about the male reproductive system, and we left off still talking about what's happening inside the seminiferous tubules, which, if you remember, are these noodly bits inside of the testes. So inside the seminiferous tubules, we have spermatogenesis happening, which is the formation of sperm. That happens when the spermatogonia divide twice in order to form the spermatids, which will develop eventually into the sperm. The Sertoli cells, which are these kind of diamond-shaped cells inside of the seminiferous tubules, are really important in this process of spermatogenesis. They are stimulated by FSH, which comes from the anterior pituitary, and when the Sertoli cells are stimulated by the FSH, they will cause the spermatocytes to start dividing and eventually develop into sperm. The Sertoli cells are also responsible for nourishing the developing sperm, so making sure they have the right amount of nutrients, and they provide a protective barrier between the seminiferous tubules and the developing sperm and the blood. So it's sometimes referred to as the blood-testes barrier. Essentially, it makes sure that any chemicals or any harmful things in the blood can't get to the developing sperm. Inside of the testes, we also have another type of cell called the interstitial cells, or the Leydig cells. They are not inside the seminiferous tubules. They are between the seminiferous tubules inside the testes. They are also stimulated by one of the gonadotropic hormones, but this time they're stimulated by LH, or luteinizing hormone, instead of the FSH. LH also comes from the anterior pituitary, and the LH will stimulate the interstitial cells to produce testosterone. In a male fetus, that testosterone is going to cause the development of the primary sex characteristics, so the penis and testes, and then later on will stimulate the descent of the testes from the abdomen into the scrotum. And then later on during puberty, a spike in testosterone will cause the development of the secondary sex characteristics. So if you look at this image here, all of these circles are essentially cross-sections of the seminiferous tubules. So each of these circles are all seminiferous tubules. Inside the seminiferous tubules, around the edge, we would have our spermatogonia, and then as you move towards the inside, you have them developing into sperm. And then outside the seminiferous tubules, these kind of vaguely triangular shapes are the interstitial cells, or the Leydig cells. And so those are the ones, again, that are responsible for testosterone. So sperm formation happens inside the seminiferous tubules, stimulated by the Sertoli cells. Testosterone production happens outside of the seminiferous tubules, stimulated by the interstitial cells. Okay, so moving on, we're now outside of the testes onto the epididymis. So this is the structure that sits on top of the testes. Once the sperm has been produced, they will move on to the epididymis, and this is where the sperm are stored until they fully mature. The sperm are considered mature once they are motile, or able to swim and move around. The sperm are the sex cells of males, so they carry the genetic information of the male. These cells do contain very little cytoplasm. Sperm are very tiny, and pretty much all of the space in them is filled up with the nucleus, with the actual DNA itself. And so that lack of cytoplasm means that there's very little energy available to the sperm. It can't carry its own energy supply with it in the cytoplasm. So instead, it will need to get energy from the semen, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The sperm does have four main parts. It has the head, which is where the DNA is stored, and the little bit of cytoplasm that it has. On top of the head, we have the acrosome, which is a little helmet that is filled with digestive enzymes that will help the sperm kind of digest its way through the protective coating around the egg. Then there's the mid piece, which is a thicker area that connects the head with the tail. In this mid piece, there is a ton of mitochondria. Again, mitochondria are responsible for energy production, and so what they will do is convert sugar, specifically fructose, that's found in the semen, into ATP energy, and then that ATP energy can be used to power the tail. And then the last piece is the tail itself, which will whip back and forth in order to propel the sperm forward. So this is just a picture of what that sperm looks like. So we have the tail here, the mid piece, the thicker part that would contain all the mitochondria. Then we have the head, the blue part here being the nucleus, which again contains the DNA, and then the red part being the acrosome, which has all those digestive enzymes. As we move on from the epididymis, again where the sperm are maturing, we then go on to the vas deferens, which is also called the ductus deferens or the vasaductus or ductus deferentia. All of those mean the same thing. It is essentially the tube that carries sperm from the epididymis to the ejaculatory duct when ejaculation is about to happen. It will help the sperm move using peristalsis, which is those wave-like contractions, because this tube is fairly muscular. During vasectomies, this is also the tube that is cut and kind of tied off to prevent the movement of sperm from the testes to the ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct is just where the vas deferens and the urethra connect with each other. During ejaculation, the ejaculatory duct will open and allow the sperm to go into the urethra. When ejaculation isn't happening, it's closed. When ejaculation happens, sperm is not the only thing leaving the penis. It's semen in general. And semen is made up of sperm as well as seminal fluid from 3 different glands. Because sperm don't carry their own energy with them, again, because of that lack of cytoplasm, they do rely on seminal fluid for some of that energy source, as well as a couple other things that we'll talk about. So as the sperm travels from the vas deferens through the ejaculatory duct to the urethra, it will pass 3 different glands, and each of those glands will add to the seminal fluid. It is important to note that the sperm doesn't go through these glands, just past them, and as the sperm is passing by, the fluid will enter the tube that the sperm is in. So the 3 different glands that we're going to be looking at are the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the Cowper's gland. So if you look at this image over here, these 4 little pieces here are the seminal vesicles. The prostate gland is this one right here. And then in this little pancake shape down there is the Cowper's gland. So we'll start with the seminal vesicles. The seminal vesicles will secrete a fluid that contains fructose, prostaglandins, and some other substances. And again, that is just going to kind of bathe the sperm on its journey. The fructose is what will be the energy source for the sperm. That's where it's going to get most of the energy required to actually swim. The prostaglandins cause uterine contractions. So once the semen makes it into the female reproductive system, it will cause some minor uterine contractions, which is thought to help the sperm move through the female reproductive system. And then the seminal vesicle fluid is also alkaline or basic, so the opposite of acidic, which helps sperm survive in the acidic environment of the vagina. So the vagina is acidic. If the sperm were to just go in there by themselves, the acidity of the vagina would kill the sperm. So some of this alkaline semen helps to neutralize the acidity of the vagina, thus protecting the sperm. Then we have the prostate, which is an exocrine gland, so meaning it secretes its fluid into a duct. It produces the majority of the fluid that makes up semen. It's also what gives semen its milky white color. It contains enzymes, proteins, and a bunch of other chemicals that support and protect the sperm. The prostate is also a smooth muscle that wraps around the outside of the urethra, and it can contract and seal off the urethra to prevent the flow of either semen or sperm. There is a medical condition where some males have an enlarged prostate, and if it gets too enlarged, it can actually cut off the pathway of urine from the bladder to the urethra, and needs medical attention to drain the bladder. Anyway, the Cowper's gland is also called the bulbourethral gland, and it also secretes some alkaline fluid into the urethra, but this alkaline fluid is not to help neutralize the acidity of the vagina. Instead, it's to try and neutralize any acid that's left in the urethra from urine that came before it. It also helps lubricate the urethra so that the sperm can go through it more easily. But because in males the urethra is shared by both the reproductive system and the urinary system, the excretory system, the urine that comes out of the urethra is quite acidic. Again, that would kill off the sperm if it was just to go through there on its own. And so what happens is the Cowper's gland releases this fluid prior to ejaculation. So this will actually, this fluid will go through the urethra before the rest of the semen and sperm do. The Cowper's gland secretion is sometimes referred to as pre-cum or pre-ejaculate. So it will go through the urethra and essentially neutralize any of the remaining urine so that the rest of the semen can pass through safely. Then the urethra is just the tube that carries fluid out of the penis from either the bladder or the ejaculatory duct. During ejaculation, the semen will move from the ejaculatory duct through the urethra and out of the body. The urethra will not transport semen and urine at the same time. That has to happen separately. And then obviously the penis is the male external sex organ. It will contain both the urethra and erectile tissue. During sexual excitement, the parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated. It causes all of the arteries that lead to the penis to dilate, thus increasing blood flow to the penis and filling the penis with blood. The veins that carry blood out of the penis will get compressed, so there's more blood entering the penis than exiting. And then the spaces in the erectile tissue will fill with blood, causing that tissue to become turgid or hard, which causes an erection. So this is a lovely series of cross sections of penis. So if you just took the penis and sliced it in half. So here you have the erectile tissue is this kind of pinkish stuff. When it fills with blood, it becomes engorged and enlarged and turgid. You can also see in some of these diagrams that here we've got arteries coming to the penis and they dilate, which allows all of this blood to fill the erectile tissue. So here the erectile tissue doesn't have all that blood and the arteries are fairly small. Here they're much larger. And then this would be the vein at the top here. When the penis is limp, that vein is opened. Here the vein is compressed, which is allowing less blood to leave. And then lastly, this is just a lovely little pathway of sperm. So it starts in the testes, that's where spermatogenesis happens, moves on to the epididymis, where the sperm will mature. Then the sperm will go through the vas deferens to the ejaculatory duct, picking up different fluids from the seminal vesicles, prostate, and Cowper's gland, but again, not entering those glands, and then out to the urethra. Okay, so that kind of summarizes the male reproductive system.